Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shaelene, and today we are talking about books. So I read 5 quite hyped up and popular YA books, and I have some thoughts on them. Let's get on into the video. First really hyped up popular YA book that I read was The Female of the Species by Mindy, McGinnis. This is a story that is set in a small town, and Alex, her older sister, was raped and then subsequently murdered, and her killer never got any jail time, even though pretty much everybody in the town knows who did it, and it's just lazy police work. So because of this, Alex is very angry, she's very frustrated, she's very upset, she's dealing with a lot, and she decides to take revenge in many different ways. But while planning out her revenge schemes, she actually ends up making a friend along the way, as well as a love interest. Now, these characters all have their own unique struggles and problems, as with any small town resident. This book deals with a lot of heavy topics. It deals with rape culture, mental health in teenagers. It also deals with drinking and drugs and a lot of partying. So this book was really hyped up. A lot of people say that this is one of their favorite YA books, and I was very excited going into it. I read this book in a 24-hour period. It was very easy to read. It was quite well paced, very intriguing. So going into this, I thought there was going to be a bit more of a murder mystery kind of element, but we already know who her sister killer is, so it's more of her dealing with those feelings and what she does with those feelings. The characters in this book were surprisingly well developed, although they were very tropey. You have Alex, who is kind of the outsider, I would say, and she's a girl that isn't like all the other girls. And then you got PK, the preacher's kid. She is, you know, supposed to be this good girl, but yet she's dealing with all these problems, and she drinks a lot. And then you have the jock, who's just looks perfect from the outside but has financial struggles and really wants to get into college. And then you have the typical popular pretty girl who just wants her jock boyfriend back. So there's a lot of tropes in this, and that's what YA is. It's just tropes everywhere, and that's what you just come to expect in YA. So the tropes did annoy me a little bit, but I felt like the overall story made up for the tropes. They do go to this spot multiple times to like party, get drunk, and have fun, and you know, along the way through all that, one of them does end up getting raped, and it is quite a harrowing scene. But I felt overall that the subject of rape was dealt with well. There's one part in the book where they are in school and there's a police officer there, and they are lecturing them about what to do if one of the girls or boys ever get assaulted, and how rape is never okay, and that, you know, there's nothing, you know, it wasn't your fault, basically, kind of thing, and that the police will treat them with respect if they come forward, kind of thing. So I really did appreciate the way that it was portrayed in the book and the way it was dealt with. I felt it was very mature, and it wasn't placing blame on the victim, which is really good. So I really like that. I thought that this book, once I had finished it, was very hard-hitting and quite thought-provoking, even though the character does take very drastic measures to kind of get her own justice. Unfortunately though, after reading this book, like right after, I loved it. I ended up rating it like really high. I rated it 4-star. I really liked it, but then now when I think about this book, I read this back in like the middle of February, I think. And now when I think about this book though, I hardly remember anything about it, and I don't feel now that it was as hard hitting as I thought it was then. Like, It hasn't really stuck with me that much. Not in the way that I thought it would. I felt like it stuck with me maybe for like a day or two, and then that was it. I really struggled to remember certain plot points, and there's a big plot point in this book that I completely forgot about until I like reread my notes kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like it's a really good book, but ultimately I just kind of forgot a lot about it, and that's kind of sad that it just didn't stick. Now I would say my rating is probably a 3.5 star. I mean, it was a good book and it dealt with important topics, but ultimately it kind of ended up falling flat for me at the end and, you know, later on. So the next book is one that is quite popular. It's not so like hyped up recently. A lot of these are more recent books, but this is definitely an older one. But I feel like it's a book that a lot of people have read, and I've seen a lot of people on Goodreads that I follow on Goodreads who are also booktubers read this book and rate it very highly. This is I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. I believe this is one of his first novels. And I believe it was published in around 2008-2009. Basically, a cab driver receives these hero playing cards with the certain quests on it that he has to go. Like, in one instance, he has to go to the house of a man where this man repeatedly rapes his wife, and he has to, like, kind of get rid of the guy. He also helps a young girl win a track and field race. He helps a church with a very dwindling patronage. So he does all these do-gooder type of things. I don't know what to think about this book at the end, so I'm just gonna go over a few things and then I'll kind of explain. The story was funny in some places. It was quite humorous, sarcastic. Ed is a pretty, you know, funny guy, but it's also very slow in a few places, and I felt my interest in this book dwindling as it went on, and I honestly would have DNF'd it, but my sister suggested I read this book, so I read it. I did not like most of the characters in the book. I feel like a lot of them were quite forgettable. The only ones that I really liked were like Mila, the old woman that whose house he goes to, and the preacher. That's really the only characters I can think about that I like. The biggest problem I have with this book is that Ed has very creepy entitlement issues towards his best friend Audrey. Ed is absolutely in love and enamored by Audrey. He thinks that Audrey has very poor taste in men and that Audrey should be dating him. He believes that Audrey should be having sex with him, and he believes that he deserves to have sex with Audrey, which is absolutely disgusting. When I read that, I wanted to throw the book across the room because it was so gross, and it completely changed my outlook on Ed and his character, and it was disgusting. And of course, by the end of the book, they get together. Surprise, surprise. That's the biggest issue I have with this book. The next thing, what was the point of the quests? I mean, yeah, Ed was kind of a nobody. He really had no plan in life in order to do things, but then by the time all these quests ended, he's still not really any further between figuring out what he actually wants to do with his life or who he wants to be. Yeah, he made a few friends along the way, but he also made a few enemies, and I just don't understand the point of the quests other than making for an interesting book. I don't think it improved Ed in any way because he's still a creepy dude. So yeah, I did not enjoy this book. I honestly wished I would have DNF'd it, but I didn't. So yeah, I ended up rating this 2 stars. It's not the worst book I read, but it's just, there's some things in it that I just didn't like. The next book I read, which was super hype, a lot of people hyped this up saying it's like one of their favorite books, it's such a good message, and you know, it's something that everybody should read, and that is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. So if you don't know the plot about this book, Star is a young black girl who witnesses the shooting death of her best friend, who they've known each other since they were babies pretty much. So obviously this deals with some pretty heavy topics. It deals with police shooting, it deals with the Black Lives Matter movement, and it deals with the systematic oppression of Black people. The plotting and the overall story was absolutely fantastic for a YA book. And I say for a YA book because I feel like sometimes YA books, they have these ideas and then sometimes they just aren't executed very well. And this was one of the cases where the plot was great, the story was great, and it was executed in such an amazing way. And the book was hard-hitting and very enjoyable. The pacing was good. I felt there wasn't a whole lot of those typical YA tropes you get in books. And you know, this is dealing with such a heavy topic. Star does become a witness to her best friend's murder, so obviously there is a police investigation into that. I really did enjoy this. The characters were really likable. I really loved the dynamics of Star's family, especially her dad. I loved her dad. This is one of the few books I've read that made me cry multiple times. Just very hard-hitting and very emotional, and thinking of it now, it gives me chills. It was just so good. And this is a book that definitely lives up to the hype. I really haven't seen too many bad reviews about it because it's just so good. So if you haven't read this yet, I highly recommend you do. It's really quite a wonderful story, and it's so important, it's very relevant, and I believe that this is a book that should be more widely read. It should be something that is mandatory for people to read in school, especially in the States. I gave this a 5-star. The next book we have is a YA murder mystery. This is One of Us is Lying by Karen and McManus. So basically 4 students all with secrets that can basically, what they think could, you know, destroy their lives. They are basically suspected of plotting the murder of a fellow student, Simon, who happens to run a very salacious website that airs all of the dirty secrets of the students that go to the school, including the 4 students in this story. So at first this book was very intriguing. It started off pretty strong. You don't really know who is murdered. I mean, the way the kid dies, it looks like an accident, but the way that everything is kind of set up, it also looks like murder. So I thought that was very interesting. So this book like really started quick, then the middle got so slow, and then the ending was just a blip. So the murder, unfortunately, was very easy to figure out. If you're pro at reading thrillers and murder mysteries, then you will probably figure this out by the first 6 chapters of this book, which is kind of sad because you never want to figure out a murder or a thriller so quick in a novel. But it was plainly obvious by that point. And also, the plotting wasn't that great. It wasn't a strong murder mystery. Honestly, there was too much police questioning, there's too much romance, and there wasn't enough drama, mystery, or suspense for this to be a good YA kind of mystery novel. And the ending was good. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't something I was expecting, but I still enjoyed it. This obviously wasn't my favorite YA murder mystery. This is actually kind of not that great. Like, I rated this a 3-star, but I don't know. I feel like I could bump my rating down because it was kind of forgettable. So I would probably rate this probably a 2.5 star. So the last hyped up YA book I read was Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I have seen so many people talk about this. It's like really blown up recently. I first saw Emma Books talk about this. I was very intrigued because I had yet to read a YA mystery that was very interesting and good. So I took a crack at this one. So in the 1930s, Albert Ellingham builds the famous Ellingham Academy. His family also kind of lived there, and they built this in remote Vermont woods where tragedy takes place as the murderer by the alias of Truly Devious ends up kidnapping his wife and young daughter and subsequently murders them, as well as another student. We're also in present day where Stevie Bell is obsessed with the mystery and the Truly Devious murders that took place at Ellingham Academy in the 30s. She's obsessed with true crime and criminology, and she wants to be an FBI investigator. So she attends Ellingham Academy with the intent on studying and figuring out who did it. There are also a little other storylines happening with this book. There is another murder of a student that does take place, and it feels very deja vu-y. And it makes for a good mystery. So this book, what I love so much about it is that it's so atmospheric. It gives you those spine tingling kind of chills, and was so good. The overall plotting and pace of this was superb. The plotting was wonderful. I absolutely loved the flashbacks to the 1930s when we were getting a first-hand look at the murder and the kidnap in the 30s. I really loved Stevie as a character. I thought she was really great. I thought she was really smart, kind of dorky and weird and awkward, but I totally related to that. And I just really loved her. I didn't like Ellie that much though. I thought she was too over top, she's too annoying. Something happens with her character later on though, which was actually kind of surprising. And that's another thing. I did not see the major twists in this book coming. And that's rare for me because I'm usually someone who is very good at predicting when twists are going to happen and what they're going to be in a story, but these ones just blindsided me. And it wasn't something I was expecting in a YA novel. So I was genuinely surprised and really pleased. There is a slight romance in this book, and it was tolerable. That's all I have to say about it. And there's not really a whole lot of tropes, which is also very refreshing. Especially, this could have been a book that would be very tropey, but it is so unique, it is so refreshing, and it's unlike any other YA mystery book I've ever read, let alone an adult mystery book. This story was very engrossing, it was very enjoyable, so atmospheric, and it totally does live up to the hype. If you love a good murder mystery, especially one that has flashbacks to the time period, an old kind of mystery like that, then you'll absolutely love this. I adored it. Those are the 5 very popular or hyped YA books that I read. I do hope to do more videos like this with different genres of books. If you read any of these books, let me know in the comments below because I would love to know your thoughts on them. What books do you think that are really hyped in YA that I should read next? If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more. You can go ahead and follow me. All my social media links will be in the description below. I have Instagram, Goodreads, and Twitter. And I hope to see you guys next time. And so does Beast, who is now asleep. Almost. Bye.